Bow! This is PapaZero here once again with another story. Picture it, Sicily, 1911. It was a crisp autumn morning. Sunshine glinted off the waves gently lapping at the sandy beach. And the scent of a ham was in the air. On his usual morning oceanside walk, an old man with a long white beard and withered look on his face stumbled upon a cluster of oysters nested in the sand not 10 meters away from the watery waves that washed ashore. But they weren't just regular old clammy oysters. These oysters were special and could speak. Gasp! I know. Wait till you hear this next part. It's definitely not Disney movie material. Startled by the old man's presence, they quickly told him in unison that they can grant him one wish each if he allowed them to live on the dry land with the rest of the humans. A big wolf-like grin spread across the man's face. He has dreamt of this his whole life. He started to cackle underneath his breath because he knew he finally made it. His dream would finally become a reality. Eating free oysters was his heart's deepest desire, and this was his moment. Besides, the idea that oysters and humans living side by side in peace would never work. The thought of an oyster with a tiny chef's hat and an apron flipping burgers made the old man laugh hysterically. After wiping tears of laughter from his face, he promptly started grabbing the oysters by a handful and shoveled them directly into his mouth. Tiny screams were heard from the man's stooped torso as he continued his unwilling oyster buffet. After nearly 5 minutes of uncontrollable gluttony, only one oyster remained. Rupert was his name. Sweating and seeing his friends and family just be eaten whole scared the bejesus out of him. He didn't know what to do. He certainly couldn't move, that's for sure. 'Cause he ain't got no arms or legs. Anywho, the old man was getting quite full. As a matter of fact, he was starting to get sleepy and actually sweaty. Meat sweats, they called it. But he knew he could handle one more. Rupert, being quick-witted, knew he had one option to talk his way out of this. Why couldn't he? The brave young oyster thought. After all, he went to Barnacle University of Myosha. He graduated top of his class. He majored in political argumentative speak, for God's sakes. One old man would not crush his dreams. One old man would not end his life like he did the rest of the oysters. One old man was not gonna stop him. Though Rupert's heart was beating fast and sweat drops were forming on his little oisty forehead, he tightened his metaphorical fist as he was fleshing out in his mind the dozens of different routes he could choose. If the old man said this, he would counter with that. If the old man wouldn't see it his way, he was going to approach him with a totally different way. He was going to survive. As the old man's eyes zoned in on Rupert's eyes, and his hand started to reach for the oyster's tiny shell, Rupert slowed his breath, calmed his mind, and spoke fiercely. "You shall not pass," is what Rupert went with in the heat of the moment, and it was exactly the right thing to say.
"You like The Lord of the Rings too?"
the old man asked, intrigued. And so he and Rupert had a riveting discussion on all things Middle-earth, and they lived together in harmony for the rest of their days. Just kidding. That's not what happened at all. I told you this ain't a Disney movie. Rewind.
"You shall not pass,"
said Rupert. Unfortunately, that did not slow down the old man even by a second. He grabbed the young oyster with his big, grubby hand and swallowed him whole. That's the story of the old man and the oysters, and thus ends our story. Who was this heartless old man, you ask? Well, that old man was Billy. Hey! Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time with another beautiful video.